speakers. This network started in 2020, actually just before the pandemic started. And the idea of the project is to help connect women experts in international relations in our region, connect with each other, and also present to the public women's expertise in international relations. I know that a number of colleagues have raised questions. Why do we have only women in our event? It is because we would like to be a mirror of what is happening, at least in our region, where mainly and overwhelmingly male experts are consulted when it comes to international relations and to political issues. So our network and our project represents a statement, and it should be taken like that, not because we do not want to have a dialogue and communicate with our male colleagues. On the contrary, I think it is a statement in order to make things more natural in the sense of discussions among experts, be they male or female or other gender. So having said this, let me invite our rector, Professor Remus PRICOPIE, to address the audience. Remus PRICOPIE is my colleague, my rector, and I salute and I thank him for being open for this kind of event and this kind of project, which may be thought of being a provocative project. And I salute and thank him for this openness, as well as Professor Cristian Pârvulescu, who is my dean and the dean of the Faculty of Political Science. Professor and Rector PRICOPIE, you have the floor.
Thank you, Liliana. Hi, everyone. I should start with some statements. The first one, I am a man. The second one, as Liliana said, we try to organize 100% women events and panels in order to send a clear message. But today, discussing with Liliana, we decided to mirror the Romanian government. So the Romanian government today has one lady, all the other are men. So we decided to organize an event where there is one man, it's me, and all the other to be women. And maybe next time when we organize another event, we'll mirror the Romanian parliament, which has 17% lady, all the other men. So we'll work on this percentage to do the other way around. And in a very kind, polite, and academic way, so we are not going to escalate the fence of the Romanian government or of the Romanian parliament, but we have to send this message. And also, I should do another confession. I was naive, considering evolution is something which goes from a situation to a better situation, and after that, significantly to improve. If we look on Romanian statistics, on parliament, government, and different other positions, we will see the evolution is not like this, is even an involution. And I see Mihaela Miroiu, and I welcome her. And I remember a story that she told me many years ago when a president of a party during the press conference was asked why on the electoral list there are no ladies. He said, we didn't find any to put on the list. Never mind the name of the president of the party and the name of the party, because in fact, all do the same. So, in fact, SNSPA is doing what a university like SNSPA is supposed to do. and is not doing this today. It started early 90s. Again, Mihaela Miroiu is a guilty person when established in SNSPA a very strong school on public policies, on feminism and minority rights and so on. And we have had progress, at least at the conceptual level. Even today event is a proof of this, but we still have to fight on this topic and on many other topics. And again, fight means academic fighting, and we know how to do it. And probably we should issue a communique, Liliana, saying today event, it's just to mirror the Romanian government structure, among others. The second thing which I would like to underline, and I try to shorten my speech in order to finally win a little bit of the 15 minutes late. We are here today because SNSPA has many, many friends. And all of you are our friends, the friends of ideas which we share. But Anca Dragu has been many times in SNSPA or supported SNSPA projects. We have Luminița Odobescu as an ambassador all the time. She's very discreet, but in fact, she supported many projects and events. I would mention one, which is not maybe for sure is not the only, but is not necessarily the most important. But we organized a club of SNSPA's graduates in Brussels, and Luminița as ambassador supported us, and she was there with us. And again, that is this is just an example. And we have Alina from German Marshall Fund. I would, if she will not be upset on me, I would define her the lady behind many ideas and projects in Bucharest and Romania, because German Marshall Funds has supported many projects, not just in SNSPA, but we started to use as a standard word projects. No, they are ideas, projects associated with ideas. And this selection was and is realized in under the leadership of Alina. And also I would like to welcome the ambassador of France Republic. It's very important. We just started a new half a year presidency. Your Excellency, welcome to SNSPA. And I was looking on the agenda, which Paris is assuming for these 6 months. And I am very happy. And I'm very happy for all topics, but I should underline SNSPA is one of the universities participating to European University Initiative, which was pushed, launched, and supported by France initially, and today by the European Commission. I know you have a very clear agenda on this, working together with SNSPA and many other universities. So the only man in the reunion today, which mirrors the Romanian government, will conclude now. Congratulating Liliana, because she is guilty also, like Mihaela Miroiu, but she has been stubborn to push this project, which naturally SNSPA fully supports. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Rector PRICOPIE, Remus. It is a surprise what you said, that this panel actually mirrors the representation of women in the Romanian government. I didn't think of that, and probably nobody here thought of that. And because you mentioned Professor Mihaela Miroiu, let me salute her, thank her very much for the wonderful surprise to discuss. She's the founder of gender studies in Romania, actually, and maybe one of the very few and first women academics who started gender programs. And also let me salute and say hello and thank you for participating to Senator Anca Dragu, to Presidential Advisor Minister POPESCU, and to Ambassador.
Liliana, you have some problems with the sound,
I'm so sorry.
with the microphone, so it's difficult for us to hear what you are saying.
I am so sorry. Thank you for letting me know. Is it better now?
Somewhat.
Somewhat better. I have to get closer to the laptop. Okay. I will try to speak louder. Is it better now? Not really.
Unfortunately, you have interruptions all the time.
It is because of the line. So I will stop speaking now and invite Mrs. Alina INAYEH, Director of German Marshall Fund, actually the project Black Sea Trust. And I will try to solve my problem with the sound and then speak later. Please, Alina.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Liliana, first of all, for organizing this and for your stubbornness and diligence in keeping organizing panels on various very important and interesting issues. And also thank Rector PRICOPIE for hosting the project and the panel, and for your very nice words about myself. I'm not necessarily behind all of the ideas that I support. The ideas that GMF and BSD supports actually comes from a lot of wonderful people, but thank you. I want to very briefly, because I know that we are a little late, talk a little bit about why we are supporting why we are supporting this project, and why I think that the discussion, the debate today is actually very timely and very interesting. And I will start with the project and with the panel. As Liliana mentioned, and as Rector PRICOPIE also hinted, it is because women experts, the presence of women experts, the participation of women experts, especially in security studies, is extremely low, much lower than actually it should be, or that the intelligence that we all have deserves. But it's not only that. We believe very strongly that not in opposition to men, but in complementarity to men, and to the way men are approaching different issues, especially in security, participation of women and contribution of women is extremely interesting. In all of the teams that I've worked in, where there were both women and men, the intelligence energy was higher and was more prolific than in teams where only men or only women were present. So that's why we support this project, not in opposition to men's, but rather in complementarity to men's. I think there is an echo.
Yes, there is an echo.
Okay, is it better?
All mics should be turned off.
Should be muted other than the speakers. Thank you. And the second thing I want to briefly talk about is why I think this conference is very timely, and why we support a conference or 2 or 3 panels on the other Europe. Speaking of, or first of all, admitting that there are more Europes, at least 2 Europes, I think it's extremely important. And I see the division, or I see this polarity, if you want, not only when it comes to liberal Europe versus illiberal Europe. I also see this dichotomy when it comes to the Europe that is being protected by NATO and EU, being part of NATO and EU, and the Europe which is not yet part of NATO and EU, while it's still Europe geographically and even politically. And both of these are very timely to talk about, because on one hand, the liberal trends are extremely strong throughout Europe, throughout the transatlantic space, I would say. And indeed, we talk about a Europe which is liberal and a Europe which is increasingly liberal, as well as we talk about a portion of Romania which is increasingly liberal, and a portion of Romania which remains faithful to the liberal values. We can also talk about illiberal and liberal civil societies, both in Romania and throughout Europe. So I think putting this issue on the table and addressing it is extremely important and very timely. The second one, I think it's even more obvious, talking about the portion of Europe which still needs to be integrated in the transatlantic space. It's a very hot issue. It's hotter by the day, I would say. And acknowledging that there are countries which still deserve to be part of the transatlantic space, or deserve the right to be part of the transatlantic space, should they choose so. It's also extremely timely and important. That is why, once again, to finish, we support this project for these two reasons. And I also hope that the discussions today will address at least some of the issues which I would like to see addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Alina. Please let me know whether you can hear me well.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to make a larger presentation of Alina INAYEH, but I think this is not the right moment. She's going to participate in the roundtable in the next session, and then I will make the presentation. Let me now welcome and thank for the participation of Anca Dragu, PhD, Anca Dragu, and Senator in the Romanian Senate. Was the lady who had the highest position in the Romanian government. She's a former Minister of Finance in the technocratical government led by Dacian Cioloș, and she held a number of positions, including at the level of European Commission, the International Monetary Fund, and in the private sector. We know each other for many years. I'm not going to mention how many years, but it is a beautiful friendship, and I would like to thank her for that and welcome her to say her viewpoint on the topic of our conference, the other Europe. Senator Dragu, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Professor Popescu, dear friend Liliana, for the nice words. And I just want to briefly say hello to the friends I see here in this conference, and I want to thank you for organizing, for gathering us together in this sunny afternoon, at least in Bucharest, and probably Madam Ambassador Popescu is enjoying the sun of Bucharest after the rainy years in Brussels. And also I want to salute and to thank you, Liliana, for the great topic and the important voices you put around the table for this actually very hot topic nowadays regarding the other Europe and illiberal regimes and the risk of illiberal regimes and what can we do about it. And yeah, I have some ideas, but I want to come back to what Mr. PRICOPIE said, and thank you for your comments. And yes, I was naive as you were, and I thought that in 2021 the share of women in the government and in the parliament would get rather to half to 50%, not to 17-18% in the parliament, and much lower in the government. So this is a sort of a reversed government with one man and many women. So, and also what Alina mentioned, we don't want to work one against the other. We want to work together, and I believe that men and women should work together because we are meant to work together. We just bring when we're talking about public policy, about international relations, we bring slightly different angles into each discussion. So staying together at the same table of discussions, either we are talking about the government or the parliament or conferences, I think it just brings benefits to the quality of the work. But talking about, coming back to the topic of today's discussion, illiberal regimes. Of course, European Union has stronger tools to keep its countries on the right way. And we may talk later on about the rule of law mechanism that was recently developed, and each country member of the European Union is assessed against the principles of this new mechanism, because we know such assessment existed only for a couple of countries before. And so it's easier inside Europe. However, we see slippages inside Europe, and we have a number of examples, unfortunately. Outside Europe, especially I'm looking at Eastern Partnership, about Western Balkans, we also see some names of illiberal attitudes and illiberal ideas. I would not say regimes, but some slippages are in all countries. And just to link a little bit these illiberal regimes with the conditions that makes illiberal regimes possible. So weak institutions, it's the precondition for illiberal regimes. Also, weak and diffuse democratic values, it's a precondition. And this is why it's somehow likely for countries that moved to democratic values, let's say recently, like 30 years ago, than for all the democracies. Also, the strength of civil society, it matters. It's an important variable, but also the economic performance and standard of living. Because illiberal regimes are associated, we see a correlation, we don't see the causality. So illiberal regimes are associated with populism in the form of economic populism, and also in the form of nationalistic slogans and nationalistic slippages that we saw. Well, this nationalistic component we also saw in old Europe, let's say like this. But what we can do to fight illiberal regimes, we here at the FANEL, I think we have to speak up together to participate in the decision-making process, also to participate in politics. And those who know me for many years, you know that I was very much against political participation. But okay, year after year, I realized that only by gathering the political power, we are able to really implement the good policies and to really to be a policymaker and to implement the right measures. So what we can do by getting involved in the political life, in civil society, and to speak up and to put on the agenda all these topics that you see that are more and more important. And maybe later on we'll also discuss about the interview of Commissioner Didier Reinders in Financial Times, and he's criticizing Romania for its latest slowdown in complying with the recommendations regarding the rule of law and so on. So I'll stop here. Thank you again, Liliana. And I'm sure this is, we are going to continue in the coming weeks, the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Anka Dragu, for this inspiring speech. I take this idea that it's important for women to get involved in politics. And this is serious, because without women's involvement in politics, I think things are going to continue the way we know. So let me invite our great speaker, Ambassador Luminița Odobescu, who is a career diplomat. She held the position of Romania's representative for many years in Brussels, of the head of our representation in Brussels, and she was recently appointed presidential counselor to the Romanian president. Perhaps she's less known publicly, but we are very welcoming her in this event and thank her very much for being receptive to our invitation, particularly that we have this conference which is focused and which comprises only women speakers. At the same time, it's a conference which focuses on a topic that she knows probably among the very few, maybe 4 or 5 specialists in Romania. She knows very well European Union. She knows the problematic of our area. I'm very happy that we have her among us. So Presidential Advisor Luminița Odobescu, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody, dear colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the invitation. First of all, allow me to thank the organizer of the event for this, I would say, double opportunity, exactly as you said, to address the distinguished audience on a topic of very high interest in my professional agenda, the resilience in and the resilience of our regions. And the second important topic is really to promote, to support the voice and expertise of ladies, of women in this field. I'm very happy to be with you today. I think we are surrounded by strong ladies, strong women. And I think maybe to respond to the challenge posed by Mr. PRICOPIE, you know, in the office of the president, the share of women is quite high. And I'm an example of this. And I'm also happy to say that in the recent year, the share of ladies ambassadors is increasing, has increased substantially. And I'm also happy to that my successor in Brussels is also a lady. So thank you again for the invitation, and it's good to see you, even if it's not possible in person, but to see you virtually. If you allow me, I would like to start my intervention by challenging the really very provocative framing that you propose for this conference. And I genuinely believe, and this is also the firm belief of the administration I represent, and the credo, I would say, that guided my professional life, I would say, that there is actually no other Europe. There is only one Europe. And I believe that our energies should be devoted to furthering the cohesion between the different European regions, bringing partners who share the same values, the same principle, closer together, and finding ways to bridge the gaps in our perhaps some different visions for the future. united in diversity, unity in the diversity, our old EU motto, is valid, is equally valid outside of the Union, and can only reach our common cause for regional resilience. And I sincerely hope that some of the specific challenges our regions, the Eastern and Southeastern Europe, is confronted, and I will touch upon the security challenges at the end of my intervention, can also be perceived as opportunities. And I think also Mrs. Drago already underlined some of these challenges. But of course, opportunities, when I'm speaking about opportunities, I'm speaking about opportunities to do better, to act differently, to think outside of the box, to find concrete ways to connect the avenues for progress that are opening, while of course firmly responding to worrying global and regional trends. I think we must be as frank and as confident as possible about where we stand and where we want to go. On one hand, it is true that our region is facing with a twofold challenge. We have to make up for historic shortfalls and cohesion gaps, while at the same time we have to engage in a very difficult post-pandemic recovery, and of course we facing geographical and geopolitical adversities. On the other hand, we have a unique opportunity to seize all these instruments and policy we have now on the table, offered by this complex environment and by the action of European and Euro-Atlantic partners. And I'm speaking about the green and digital transition proposed by the EU, which are increasingly perceived as a new model of development. And here, I mean, there are different instruments we have. We have the Global Gateway Strategy, which aims to create partnerships to connect people, goods, and services around the world in a sustainable way. We have the partnership with the US under the 3Cs initiative, which promotes reliable and sustainable projects on these three pillars: infrastructure, energy, and digital transformation. And of course, very dear to me, the Eastern Partnership Strategy Vision post-2020, based on recovery, resilience, and reforms. Liberal trends are unfortunately no longer our, I would say, regional issue. Fortunately, raised awareness on this issue at European and global level is also leading to more and more concrete efforts to promote and to protect democracy, our society, to respond with confidence to third actors' actions. Practically, those actions who are trying to undermine our joint efforts. From this perspective, I would like to mention the results of the first ever Summit for Democracy, organized at the initiative of the President Biden back in December, with different pledges and different measures announced in areas such as combating election interference, human rights advancement, preventing a fight against human trafficking, and so on. At the EU level, we have the European Democracy Action Plan, which has been forged, going hand in hand with the Media and Audiovisual Action Plan, in order to empower citizens and build democracy that are more resilient across the Union. And here I want to mention also the sanction regime against cyber attacks, because one partner country face today a huge cyber attack, and this is why I'm referring to this sanction regime established in May 2019, and it was a concrete delivery of the Romanian presidency of the Council of the EU. I expect you to delve deep into these topics and many more during the roundtable discussions. So, but of course, I cannot speak about resilience in our region without underlying the security context, the security challenges, and the profound transformation it has undergone only in the last two decades. And you know all what we are facing these days. Of course, there is a proliferation in the nature of threats, their amplitude and I mean, from military to asymmetric, from terrorist to hybrid conflicts, which employ large-scale cyber capabilities, propaganda, disinformation campaign, of course, illegal trafficking, industrial espionage, economic crisis, including the one triggered by COVID. The context around Europe remains very complicated with protracted conflicts, the disturbing impact of the climate change, irregular migration, extremist radicalization. But an entire transformation process is also underway to remodel our threat perception and promote a collective model for action in order to ensure our security and stability for our own country and for our partners. The continued commitment and support to the aspiration and to the free sovereign choices of our partners are part of the larger and strategic debates on NATO new strategic concept or the EU strategic compass. I do not want to sound too dramatic or too pessimistic, but of course we should be better prepared, and you should be better prepared, NATO should be better prepared to act on this basis. The priority of the action that the European institutions, the member states are pursuing include a strategic and integrated approach of the EU relation with its closest neighbors, the Eastern partners under the umbrella of the Eastern Partnership, but also the Balkans, with a view to move forward together. On our part, Romania will remain an anchor of stability, a promoter of a closer regional integration, strengthening resilience, upholding democratic values, both at home and in our region. And we will support without any hesitation the French presidency objectives dedicated to these goals. I would like to wish you every success in answering this fundamental question from my point of view. How can we ensure we are up to this task? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Presidential Counselor. It seems that you are also optimistic and pessimistic at the same time, or maybe cautious, optimistic and cautious, because you started by saying that there is no other Europe, there is only one Europe, which is which gives us hope and future perspective. Thank you very much for your presentation and your insights. I'm sure that the participants are going to pick up on what you said and maybe continue or maybe further with other questions. I announced in the chat that all the questions to be asked are to be asked at the end of the speeches because we have a very honored speaker to start very soon. Let me just present our next speaker, who is Ambassador Laurence Auer, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the French Republic in Romania. And we know that France is currently holding the presidency of the EU Council. She's also a career diplomat. Her Excellency graduated from the Institutes of Political Studies of Aix-en-Provence and Paris. She's holding a master's degree in Arabic language and literature. She was a Fulbright Fellow at Berkeley and UCLA. I'm not going to mention all of them, but she also has a diploma of advanced studies in political science. Also, let me say that Ambassador Auer was a spokesperson at the European Commission in Brussels, director of the French Institute in the United Kingdom, and director of Culture, Education, Research and Network at the Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs. Welcome, Ambassador Auer, and we are so happy to have you here because it feels like there is only one Europe. Since we are all speaking here, we are speaking in the language of the country that opted for Brexit, but we are speaking with a very good friend of Romania, the representative of France, the ambassador of France in Romania. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you very much, Liliana, for this possibility to, on the first week of the French presidency, to give me the floor. And let me stress that I could have come with my flags, with all my 3 flags, because now I have the European flag being put forward. But I prefer to stay in my office with Marianne in the back. I hope you see Marianne, because I feel like I am part of your group. I'm this new generation of experts in foreign affairs, expertise in international relations, and European affairs. As Luminița Odobescu stressed, it is something which is very important to assess that in multilateral, but as well bilateral high-rank posts, and I include, of course, positions in the States, we have enough women who have this competence and are recognized, even if for a long time I was dedicated by my own ministry on soft power issues, and no reason why it should be the case in the next years. In Europe, as a matter of description of the French network, half of the ambassadors, including my very dear colleague in NATO, are women. It's a fight. It's not always easy. You know, if you take the directors, my predecessor, Michel Ramis, is one of the only director in the Paris headquarters of Foreign Affairs. As I left, I was one of the only one, and 1 year ago now she's back to Paris. She was appointed there as a director for America, which is one of the geographic directorates, but it's still a fact. And by the way, it was thanks to my Fulbright scholarship that I discovered the gender issues transversal academic studies, and I'm always very happy to develop this competence that I did gather when I was in my 30s, because I feel it's still very important to do mentorship, to make it better work between officials and experts. So I'm very happy that you invited me to speak about the other Europe. I fully share your view that it should not be the case. For instance, in Paris, Romania should not be seen as the new Europe, or should not be seen as the other kind of country, the newcomers. We are celebrating this year 15 years of joining the EU for Romania. and I hope very much to change during this French presidency and the big work we did to prepare it, the image Romania has in France. And it is true on the topic resilience and assertiveness of the region that the sudden situation of crisis happened to change a little bit the vision that usually we have of Europe. If you take the agenda of the French presidency, I had the questions, you know, all the week. Why do you start with Africa, whereas it should start with Ukraine? And it's true that you should always remember that even if it's France, if it's we are very assertive, and we want a foreign policy and a defense policy to be stronger. Sometimes we were even a bit provocative, and we pushed for institutional changes. We pushed for different tools in the EU to be able to assess more what foreign policy should be from in the EU. It is true that a presidency, as everybody know about around the table, is only a position for 6 months. And we are honest brokers here. So meaning that we took over after Slovenia and the Brussels summit on Eastern Partnership, or in the Balkans, we took over an agenda with a trio of presidencies that would handle the different pieces of the puzzle. And we have Africa. It's a summit in February. We have Indo-Pacific, which was a very strong issue when we took the point of the relationship with China, which was completely unbalanced. And 2 years ago, we thought we should have a global view on what we should do in the region. And of course, we have a lot of commercial and trade question and humanitarian question. I want to come back with this kind of motto, 3 keywords on the French presidency, on why we took the strategic compass and why we have the defense fund and why today we started our presidency with the gymnich is because, of course, it's the tradition, but we have a joint ministerial meeting today in Brest at the eastern point of European continent, in front of the ocean, in a place which is very military, with both ministries of defense and foreign affairs. We have the feeling we always had as members, of course, of Security Council, NATO, founding father of all the multilateral system. We know we have a certain responsibility in risk, crisis, and risk and crisis management. We know for sure that this very big security and defense new dialogue, which started from December 25 with the proposition of Russia of a global new system, will be in the heart of our presidency. It is important to mention because clearly it makes a shift of the key importance of the EU, which was dedicated to a lot of issues since the starting point of the pandemic, including reinforcing our tools in economic terms to be able to have our own autonomy, towards a more crisis management period, which will for sure take a lot of energy, but also a lot of resources of all member states. In this context, and I'm so happy that Luminita helped me a lot because she said already that France and Romania are hand to hand on the main topics of the French agenda, which are obviously recovery with the resilience plan, and of course ecological transition and digital transition. But of course, the first point about this new crisis that superposes itself to the sanitary crisis and the energy crisis, and somehow are interlinked, will take a lot of our efforts, and we need the expertise of all you around the table, because, of course, Black Sea, Crimea, studies, transatlantic studies, are not only in the French capacity. We need all the countries to be around the table and to be able to help. Maybe to stress what is the strategic compass. Sorry, Luminita, you know it by heart. The idea is not to create a European army. The idea is not to substitute to NATO. The scope is not the same. The geographical objectives of the EU and NATO are different. The treaties are different, etc. The idea of this exercise, which started with the German presidency, is to build together a strategic culture altogether, with a list of attitudes to be able to respond to those kind of situations that happened since December 25 with Russia and Ukraine crisis. I'm not going to say again that strategic compass is going to be the EU definition of the alpha and omega in defense strategy. It's an ongoing process. It's a strategic discussion to be able to be expressing publicly what the EU has in his hands in case there are some challenges coming from outside, and also to reaffirm the complementarity with NATO. Immediately I was asked, that was the second question, you know, but why do you favor strategic compass over the strategic concept in NATO? Why do you want to push that and not the country? We really feel that this was a main misunderstanding between France and the other member states when the president said NATO is in cerebral death. He didn't want to say he didn't want NATO. He said that the Americans were asking us to be in Europe more strategic and a little bit more powerful in defending our territory, and that this was the moment to discuss. I think the discussion started very well thanks to a very good understanding of where we stand in the EU defense and security tools, and it started as well in a good timing towards NATO, towards the new dialogue with the US, and it starts in a good timing as well with the European Defence Funds, which has been started in 2 years ago with 11 billion euro, in the idea to have pilot project, joining projects to reflect on the new technology challenge in this sector. So it's really different from what NATO is doing. And it's also quite interesting to see that Romania understood very well the interest of joining a project, even if it's being done in a public-private partnership. It is so important to see this. Of course, in the recovery plan, I'm not going to start again to explain what Schengen is and what we are going to do with the PNRR, because you know it better than me. But I'm going to speak a little bit more about Western Balkan, because at some point the president, when he had his press conference on the 9th of December, he felt obliged, he felt committed to say there is a momentum, there is a moment in the French presidency agenda where we are going to meet and we are going to read where we are, whatever it is. Would it be on the process of starting negotiation with Albania or Northern Macedonia, or in the dialogue between Serbia and Kosovo? We feel that you cannot examine the crisis, the two crises, Ukraine and Western Balkan, in a totally separate way. We really feel it's our duty as the EU to look at our neighborhood and to be able to be, firstly, a partner to this constellation of countries. Of course, I'm not, in this perspective, I'm not saying that the global challenges, rule of law or Schengen is not important, but I feel A lot have been said already, and thank you to Anka Dragu reminding how much it is important that we are, and I will be able to answer the questions. Of course, recovery and strength. The first kind of keywords cannot work with the second. And strangely enough, here I become a woman again. I hate those ideas of independence, sovereignty. I spent all my career linking people, expressing in the light of the partners that everybody around Europe, especially, had qualities, and where there was no France being dominating the others, and there is no idea of imposing things to the other. This is where the soft and the soft power and the hard power, probably it's a question more of methodology. I always see that we should be equal. We should not be trying as France to remind that we are the only one to have the deterrent force, that we are nuclear power, you are not. We are richer than you, you are not. We have 22% of shares in Penderere, so please do this, and you have the rule of law, do it. No, I think the idea, the second key word that we translated by putere has actually a very different meaning, power, than only just putting ambition, putting pressure, saying that we're going to build, etc. And thanks God, the idea was actually tempered a lot because of the crisis. We see each other in a period of so numerous accumulated crises, that the idea that one country can dominate and solve the problem of the other, whatever the country, would it be Germany or France, has become completely unrealistic. And I hope very much that the French presidency is seen as such, as a we are doing our job. We don't want to dominate or drive Europe, whatever the new chancellor in Germany is doing. The important is to get everybody around the table. It's also a question of decision making. As you know, we are all on a consensus basis, and a lot of things that we took over in the last 2 years had to be done by consensus. You know, now we have on the table an energy crisis, an energy policy, and a health policy. Everybody knows, being a little bit of experts in Brussels, that there were no Brussels internal market topics. So you cannot decide by a qualified majority. You have to get a consensus. Of course, we could discuss a lot this digital agenda, this ecological transition agenda, but please keep in mind that the stakes are high, and all the new topics which come on the agenda have their own reason to be there. Even if you take the social dimension, the solidarity dimension, and it is true that if you compare what I was doing in the 90s in the EU and what we are doing now, we are inventing a new period. We are inventing a new type of topics being handled all together. Cybersecurity is part of them, and I'm very, of course, proud and happy that Romania, as on the topic of resilience, was a very active and very powerful partner into this. Finishing my presentation would be on this third keyword, which is easy to translate into Romanian language. Appartenența, very strange in English, you know, belonging. What do you mean by that? But the idea is there that we have built Europe in different times last 2 years, and that we need to be clear that the human dimension is taken on board. It means the youth, it means the spirit of everybody. You know, we were always in France, you know, we start with coal and steel, And a lot of energy was spent by the different French governments to put culture, education, universities, Erasmus, research, and values. At some point, you know, when I did participate to the first Article 7 rule of law procedure with Poland in front of me, I felt really that on rule of law, the governments in front of France were fed up, that the French were always speaking about the values, democracy, etc. It was in a period, I remember, the first session where we had to take that new article in the treaty was 2017, and it was also a tough period for Romania. But still, this idea that we will not have building Europe in a technocratic way, that we need results and we need to show the citizens that we are there to prove our action gave results. I'm very positive again because you know, we did it for the sanitary crisis. We created a mechanism to buy vaccines. We created it immediately with the European Commission, a strong commission and good agenda, synergies for doing a lot of things that we could not do before. So on this, I'm also confident that you will be proud of the French presidency. We will continue this work expressing fight against wrong information, the fight against hate speech, the fight against European university, looking at the youth and looking at the future of Europe. Thanks a lot for giving me the floor. I already was too long, so I hope now we have food for thought and lot of questions. And again, sorry I didn't handle with Schengen, because I feel a lot has been said already. I can repeat every day. You will, of course, having me speaking on Schengen, but I'm also ready to answer this because it's a key priority between France and Romania as well.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for the warmth of your speech, first of all. And thank you for all the insights you gave us here. I take from your speech, first of all, this idea that from women's viewpoint, this idea of independence is somehow strange, because we feel that we are more interdependent than independent. I would like to, now I see that the technical difficulties were not mine. I was afraid that they were from me. So we just got in chat this mention here.
Sorry, this is why we used to use very often, instead of independence, the concept of autonomy for women. Because we don't believe in independence, it's rather artificial and for sure very abstract. In fact, we are searching for autonomy for our own mind, our own brain to judge the world we are living in. Independence is a little bit, you know, hectic and strange.
This is Mihaela Miroiu, Professor Mihaela Miroiu speaking, who actually published the book on this idea of autonomy. We have a question, Ambassador, for you. I'm going to read it to you. It comes from Cristea Oana Veronica. As France is a strong supporter of EU strategic autonomy, and you mentioned Western Balkans and the priority for France during the EU presidency, how do you see the role of the Western Balkans in the process of strengthening EU strategic autonomy in the coming years? Very interesting question. What is the role of the Balkans? What could be?
Well, first of all, you have noticed, or maybe not, that was it was my first ambassador post. So I was posted in Skopje in a time where we were discussing a peace treaty under the United Nations agenda. We were committed to work between Greece. It was a bilateral discussion, and for me this was incredible because, of course, since '92 it was a kind of a incredible place within the European continent, you know, where we didn't have an agreement, so it was very necessary. And as well, it was the last European war. So I was, of course, very much marked by this experience because it was clear that the EU and NATO were as much important in the stability process of all the ex-Yugoslavia countries than their own democratic or political forces. And you cannot, again, you cannot imagine that when you are a French citizen. You just don't realize how important it is for stability of the whole continent. So yes, I believe that if I take your question and try to answer it, what would be the importance of the Western Balkans towards the EU and towards the stability of the continent, it is quite important in different perspectives. Of course, it was obvious when Croatia joined the EU 2013, and just after that, we had the migration crisis. Of course, it was obvious that when we had the Slovenian presidency, that all the Western Balkans were as important as Slovenia or Croatia. And so, in my view, it is an unfinished job. And in my view, we are committed not to, of course, to finish it in one day, but we need the Western Balkans, whatever topic we discussed. It was also very striking to me to see that without a strong EU, you had suddenly very destabilizing forces that were coming back in the Western Balkans. So it was interesting to see that. Again, this other Europe in France is not much known than, for instance, Moldova in France. And so there is also a problem of image to change for any French citizen, to give a positive image of the different countries, so they don't see them as they saw it 20 years ago. I'm not sure I completely answered your question. I tried my best. It was a difficult question.
Thank you, Ambassador. I have a question for all speakers, and we are going to give the floor to all of them if you wish. The question is, what can be done so that Brussels approach to the neighbors of the European Union, be they candidates or Eastern European post-Soviet countries? What can Brussels, or what can be done so that Brussels approaches less bureaucratic this area and more adapted to the local conditions of these countries?
Of course, I can start with this because as a in the EU, when I was deputy EU director, I handled a lot with that. You know, enlargement is a set of rules being put on the table in '94. And this was a very big crisis with France 2 years ago, because at some point the president said, but how do you want to keep the same rules than in '94? It's not a strict rule. We should evolve and make it more adapted. Otherwise, you were opening one chapter never like with Turkey, you know, since 64, opening one chapter, never finishing it, and so on and so on. The European Commission changed the methodology, and now the methodology is much better. It's much more comprehensive, and it's like on the rule of law. The European Commission made a great work in terms of methodology, and so as soon as those negotiations start again, I'm sure the results and the assessment will be very different. For before, you know, it was a very formal process. You had 1,000 laws to adapt in your national legislation and full stop. Now you can open many more chapters at the same time, and you can actually assess more the results. So, well, I'm confident. I'm confident that it will move. Of course, I cannot say when Bulgaria will accept to open negotiation too. It's a political point. It's not a technical point.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Let me give the floor now to answer, because she also has lots of experience in the European Union, Ambassador Luminica Odobescu. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for the question. Is a very, very good question, because if you look at what we are doing in the Western Balkan, or I mean the EU is doing in the Western Balkan or in the Eastern Partnership, there are a lot of policy, there are a lot of financial instruments, we have investments plan, we have supported these countries with vaccine and so on. But the problem we are facing, one of the problems EU is facing in both regions, is related to the strategic communication. Because we are doing a lot, but we don't reach the citizens. And this was one of the points Romania raised in several discussions, when we discussed the enlargement or recently in the Eastern Partnership Summit, because it's how we can convince and show the citizens that EU remains a pillar of prosperity, is helping these countries, and we are doing a lot. But this is the reality. We are not so visible in the life in the media. I mean, EU not. We all the member states, we are not so visible. We are not able to reach the citizens in these countries. And we should do, and we are also facing the disinformation. We should do more as EU in terms of communication and presenting what we are doing towards the country. But we still have some unfinished business, like the opening the negotiation with Albania and North Macedonia, and we understand also their frustration. We have to work together to find solutions. In this case, it's also to try to find a solution between Bulgaria and North Macedonia. We hope that the new government in Bulgaria will be able to restart the dialogue and find some compromise solution in order to allow these countries to start the negotiation, because it's a good sign for the regions. I mean, the citizens from these countries, they are looking at us and see that they are blocked. And the best message is to start the negotiation. And we see that there is a lot of work to do together. But I think for them, EU remains a pillar of prosperity, of stability, and the European perspective is high on the political agenda of our partners. So I mean, we are among us, but we also have to recognize that we have a lot of work in front of us in terms of communication, or putting together all the instruments we have. So these are my comments, and I think this and also fighting against disinformation. It's strengthening the resilience of these countries. We have seen today Ukraine face huge cyber attack. So it's of course we stand in solidarity with our partners, but sometimes it's not enough. We have to work together to face these challenges, very serious challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. It looks like the strategic communication issue is important both ways, as Ambassador Aware was mentioning the fact that the Balkans are not very well known in France and probably in other Western parts of Europe. Yes, we take that. Thank you very much for your contribution. Let me invite Senator Anka Dragu to react to this question. Thank you.
Thank you, and great question and a difficult answer. That's not a recipe that, okay, let's make Europe more tempting and for neighboring countries. But let me, so I did work a little bit in during my my activity with European Commission. I worked with the neighboring countries, and I was working on the macroeconomic, macro-financial assistance program. So that's a financial assistance granted by, it's a combination of grant and loan from the EU to neighboring countries. And it was a way to help countries and to help the rule of law and democratic rules to really be to flourish in these countries. But and we were talking here about the methodologies and so on, but beyond all these programs and rules and methodologies, I think it's we have to talk about trust and confidence on both sides. So neighboring countries and accession countries, and they should really trust that embracing the European values is the way for long-term development for their countries. Also, the European Union, through its institutions, should be really convinced that enlargement is the key for a powerful Europe, especially when we see all the threats of today. Yes, and we think that over the last 3-5 years, we saw many new challenges. Even the pandemic, it was a significant challenge for Europe, and I think it was proven that European countries succeeded to deal much better with the pandemic than countries outside. Yeah, because at the end of the day, we learned in Europe, in the EU, we learned the lesson of solidarity during the last 2 years. But we can also talk about other kind of risks beyond this sanitary risks and health risks. So my point is that we need trust on both sides, that this is the solution, and the rules promised and developed by the EU, these are the solutions for a strong economy, for strong countries, for strong democratic economy. So that's also about the dialogue, about strategic communication, and as you all mentioned in this discussion here. And I think the conference on the future of Europe is a good exercise in bringing Europe closer, Europe as an idea, yes, as rules and meaning, closer to its citizens, including the topic of enlargement, because we have to fight inside Europe with some strange ideas, but also outside Europe. So it's important to build trust. My short answer.
Thank you very much, Senator Dragu. So we take this idea of, at least I take this idea of building trust among us. And I also take this idea that you mentioned earlier, that somehow, even though it might look, or it might be perceived as counterintuitive to Western European EU members. Bringing in the Balkan countries might strengthen the European Union rather than weakening. And I think this is an idea that maybe we will also take as part of the result of our conference. We have now a question which was sent to everybody. I'm going to voice it. It's coming from a leader of the LGBT movement in Romania, Florin Bucuceanu. And the question is this one. How do we deal with EU members like Romania, Poland, etc., that do not comply with EU Court of Justice decisions that are binding in the European Union? What model does Romania offer for non-EU countries when it does not respect the decision of the Court of Justice on the issue of freedom of movement? And it's quoting the case Coman and Hamilton case from 2018. So which is a democratic issue. So it touches upon the democratic values of the European Union. What would you answer? Let me postpone the answer to this question. I'm not going to quit on it. I'm just postponing it because it's a difficult one. I'm going to ask even a more difficult question, if you do not mind. And it's very topical and sort of urgent, maybe. So the Russia issue, the 25th of December. How do you see, because you all three of you are very well, you are experts in the European Union. Russia is trying to change the game and addressing NATO and the United States when it comes to the European security. So how can we see this being compatible with the biggest neighbor of the of Russia, which is the European Union, and with Minsk too? What do you make of this kind of position that Russia is taking? Because I see a contradiction here. So equally difficult question. It depends on who would like to answer first. And which of the two questions? You have a choice.
Of course, I mean, I can answer one of the question, and the second, I mean, the first question should be checked with the government who has to implement the European Court decision, and I have to check exactly what is the state of play. But on the question of Russia, because I mean, the Romanian position was clearly expressed by recently the president, the prime minister, and also the foreign minister. There are discussions ongoing within the NATO. Today, as Ambassador our said, ministers, foreign minister, EU foreign minister, a meeting in France, in Gimnik, and to discuss all the security challenges at our borders. I mean, these security challenges are of great concern for all of us. It's not only a question for the countries on the eastern flank, it's a question for all of us, for the EU, for the NATO. And I think our position is really very, very clear on this point, and it was publicly mentioned by the highest Romanian authorities, I would say. it's serious because it's at our borders, and for us, unity in the EU, and I think also Ambassador underlined this, unity within NATO with our US partner is essential, and it was very visible this day in the discussions with Russia in different formats. I think what is important is to continue the dialogue in order to de-escalate the situation, I think it is remain a priority, and also to be prepared for any kind of situation. But I think the point is now to continue this dialogue in order to de-escalate. I think this is my answer, I would say, to your question. And I saw on the screen another question. It's for me, if I can answer now, it's about this tripartite regional format. I just want to about the three countries, Georgia, Republic of Moldova, Ukraine, and their relation with the EU. I think, of course, for my country, for Romania, Eastern Partnership with the 6 member states is of course essential, and but also what was encouraged by us and by the EU as well is this tailor-made approach, because there are differences. They are countries who are more advanced towards European integration, and these three countries also are more advanced in their relation with the EU. So it's very important, this principle of its merit, its own merit to be underlined and to be kept, because it's also essential and to have a tailor-made policy to respond different kind of concern our partners are facing. But this idea of strengthening also the integration among the three countries, it's also essential. If you remember, before our accession, we also in different formats try to strengthen the cooperation among us in order to support the process of integrating later on in the internal market. So any form of cooperation among these partners, it's very useful, and it's helpful also for the countries as such. So we encourage practically the cooperation and one of the pillars, in fact, of the Eastern Partnership is this so-called multilateral pillar through which the cooperation among our partners is encouraged, and that there are different instruments at their disposal to strengthen the interconnection, either in the energy, transportation, or digital, to help the integration later on in the internal market. But it's not only, I mean, in these fields, it's and also we have, EU has association agreement and economic agreement, the CFTAs with all these countries, and practical, all the instruments are there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's good that you mentioned this question, because it just escaped me. I just saw it after you started answering it. So the issue of the associated trio is a very important issue, and thank you for answering it.
Yes, if I can say something, so it's of course it was better than ambassadors of the POPESCU spoke first, because I have only information through what I have from my colleagues. We are not in the crisis in the discussion system, but what can I say, because it's very important to clarify here in this country that the French position towards Russia is not different than what Minister POPESCU said. We are looking for unity, and it's not only because we are chairing the council and we want to find a consensus. It's not a question of methodology. It's tactical and strategic, because what are the Russians trying to do in this sequence they go and discuss with the Americans about the future of Europe. They don't mention future security. They don't mention they just don't mention the regional process. So it's good that you mentioned the Minsk process. I can also add Normandy process. And by the way, it is very important to understand that we are almost constantly preparing a united position within NATO, because it's really a question of security of the territory, and it's a question also of respecting the treaties in this new process. So I would, of course, go along with all what Luminița Obedescu says. I was checking on my computer, do we have a kind of a conclusion? But the gimmick, you know, it's an informal process. So what they have been doing now in Brest is probably assessing the next step, the risks, the changing information, and we have to follow thoroughly what are going to be on the table in the next week. What we can say on behalf of France is that we have different legal tools to answer in case the security system is at stake. And of course, it's been now a long time we're discussing about security of Ukraine. And it's not that we want to suddenly answer the provocation, because it's been now a long time. I remember when the French Navy arrived in December in the Black Sea, it was immediately targeted so by the Russian forces, and we all know what's going on in the Black Sea and in Crimea. But what I want to say is the same than Mrs. Odobescu is saying. We are looking for unity, because we don't want to be split in this period, because it's very dangerous to be. So.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Let me perhaps reiterate the question asked by Florin Vucuceanu. What do we do with member states which do not comply with the European Union Court of Justice? What can be done? I'm just asking, maybe Senator Dragu would like to answer. She was member of the cabinet. She has experience in the government. She has EU experience. It's only if you feel like answering. I'm just asking.
Yeah, sure. Well, for this kind of situation should be mentioned in report on the state of the rule of law of the European Commission. And in general, we saw recently the discussions here in Romania about the necessity of applying EU legislation, including EU the decisions of the EU court. So for sure, it requires really political determination at the level of the government and of the parliament and the ruling coalition in general, to make sure that such provisions are enforced, are in place, and because otherwise Romania would not comply with basic rules of the EU. So this kind of slippages should be tackled immediately by the government, and should not create any sort of question marks regarding the determination of Romanian authorities when it comes to enforcement of the EU legislation and decisions of EU Court of Justice, which is at the same level, yes. Yes, we are behind on some topics, and it's a good moment now for the government to show more determination in this respect. But just talking briefly also about Russia, and I think Ambassador POPESCU pointed out very well on the need of continued dialogue and intensify the dialogue, because yes, we are in the situation where we absolutely need to de-escalate the current tensions. That's no other way we can see ahead. And there's been some months and years of tensions accumulated in this EU-Russia cooperation. And this is the moment that we move ahead with really more powerful and stringent and actually applied dialogue between EU and Russia. As I say, that's not it's not other way we can see here. About the Eastern Partnership and the 3 countries, I met representatives of the 3 countries, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine, a few months ago. And they were having discussions with Romanian authorities at all levels, at the parliament, at the government, in the foreign affairs committees of the parliament, somehow pushing for their objectives and explaining the good steps they took on the pace of reforms in line with EU values. And we have here to mention especially the excellent developments of 2020 in Moldova. I think in this group of countries now, Moldova is the one that is somehow pushing ahead the discussions and the best practices implemented in this part of the world. And so the efforts of these countries are present to show Europe that they are making constant steps in reforms and in staying in line with European values. And I think on the other side, Europe should get back to them and should say that, look, we see that you're making efforts, that you're taking measures and making steps ahead, and we validate your steps, and we sort of extend this kind of support to you. I mean, the efforts of the 3 member states should have a clear echo in Brussels. Otherwise, the support of population, you know, it's and what we were talking earlier, the trust, the support of population in these countries is going to be shaken. If okay, we do these efforts, but what do we is Europe acknowledging our efforts? Is it a result of this?
Yeah, maybe I can add a little bit. Of course, I don't want to speak on behalf of the Romanian government or state, but when I met the Minister of Justice and I expressed that at the press conference the day after with Bogdan Aurescu, he's a very good legal expert, it was very clear that we didn't even discuss the supremacy of the European law towards the national law because it was not questionable. It was not a point that would be put on the table, you know, suddenly. And that's very important. That makes the difference, you know. If we have a procedure on PNRR in Hungary and in Poland, you don't have in Romania. And it was never an idea that we would have procedures or you would question the supremacy of the European law in Romania. So please do not misunderstand me if I didn't answer. It's not that I want to stress again what's going on, but it's quite obvious that it happens that way. Now, about the new law on justice and the MCV, it's another, of course, another question. I hope very much we have on the table a law which is corresponds to the Venice Commission request or the advice, etc., and we can move forward. Everybody agrees in Europe that now we have the new mechanism of rule of law. To have two mechanisms is a nonsense. So that's the position I try very much to push with my authorities. Of course, at this stage, we need to see that all the things which we are expected are done. But again, the government express and confirm that those laws and those discussions are underway. We are there, of course, to remember what's going on and why we need so it's not only to say it's old-fashioned, it's also to say why we had this and how we can progress. This somehow has nothing to do with French presidency, because there is no discussion at the Council about that. It's in the hands of the European Commission to put on the table a new report on the rule of law in July.
To react, I think we have our position. It's very clear on this. The supremacy is not questionable. We had a reaction of the Prime Minister at the beginning of the year. It is clear this is not an issue because we are a member of the EU. So it's and also the commitment of the government towards the finalization of the cooperation and verification mechanism. So I think the things are clear, and it's very important to really focus on different concrete issue we have on the agenda, and there are mechanisms. We have the rule of law mechanism at the level of all member states, and we are checked as other member states through this mechanism, which is a very useful mechanism. I think the position of the Romanian authority is very, very clear on this point. So I don't want to comment more, but I think there are no issue on these points. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all your answers. I think we covered a lot. There are two more questions, but obviously we do not have time to address them. They are very important. One of them is related to the conflicts that are surrounding the European Union, from Transnistria to Kosovo, let alone Ukraine. And the other question is related to, I'm just going to read the last question. How can European Union fight the Russian and Chinese propaganda campaigns in Eastern Europe? I'm just going to, I just voiced these questions because I think they are very important. We don't have time to answer because otherwise we get over time. And you are all very busy persons, and I thank you for your patience. I would like to offer the floor to our rector, who was very patiently listening to us and at the same time empathizing with the position of women who are attending a discussion of only male panels. So thank you very much. You have the floor, Rector PRICOPIE.
Thank you. I have benefited a lot being patient and listening you. Thank you once again for organizing this today conference and for inviting me. Even though the questions were not addressed to me, let me try to answer from SNSPA's point, from SNSPA's position some, because we are very interested, and also we try to underline these answers in many of our public statements and events. Starting with bureaucracy. I used to work in the Ministry of Education. I have worked with the European Commission in for many years, and I've heard many times the bureaucracy from Brussels. But my question is, it's a bureaucracy from Brussels or bureaucracy from our capital, Bucharest or Budapest or so on? Because as a Minister of Education, I arrived in 2012 with a lot of structural funds blocked, but the bureaucracy was in Bucharest, not in Brussels. And also, it's a very easy way, if we don't like or if we don't understand, it's a very easy way to say we are not allowed by Brussels. For example, if we don't like the idea of transparency, then we say Brussels is too sophisticated, too bureaucratic. What is sophisticated when we speak about transparency? Nothing. We just have to implement the minimum rule in order to assure transparency of a process from procurement to whatever. Also, we have to recognize, and if we look in documents, and there are many evidence on this direction, it's a matter of administrative capacity. Sometimes what we don't understand, because we are not prepared enough at the level of public administration, we say it's bureaucracy. So from this point of view, our university is doing a lot, not just on academic program, but also on continuing education programs for people in the public sector, trying to explain and to teach, if I may use this word, the mechanisms, the rules, the regulations when we speak about European Union issues. Also something which, Luminita, I'm sure you remember, we discussed, you remember we discussed, we forget we are European Union. We say European Union doesn't allow us, but we are members, we are part of the European Union. Also, international monetary funds will not allow us, but we are members there in the World Bank and in NATO. So we have to act as part of the team, not as someone outside the team asking for, I don't know, different favors or whatever. Related to the European Union Court of Justice, we have to implement the decisions. This is a rule, an elementary rule of democracy, never mind the topic. Some are sensitive, but this is a democracy. And the European democracy is built on rules, on legislation, and that is what we have to do. So these are two questions on which I wanted to underline, and once again, I was the one learning and benefiting a lot staying here and listening to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Remus, Rector PRICOPIE. I think it was a very rich opening of a conference with many viewpoints, many interesting ideas. Let me announce you that the next session will start in half an hour. We will keep this link. We will just have a break until 4:00 p.m. So please stay with us, and thank you, Rector PRICOPIE, Ambassador Luminita Odobescu, Senator Anca Dragu, and Ambassador Laurence Oer. Thank you very much to all participants and the audience. So we'll keep this, don't leave, just close and stay here and come back at 4:00. Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.